Welcome back to Kerbal Space Program. Today we are continuing our exploration of Kerbal system and we are launching our next generation interplanetary craft to Jool. Between these episodes I've done a little bit of research and it appears that our antimatter reactors should work even when there is a docking port between the container and the reactor. So let's see how it goes. Let's start our laboratory. And for some reason we are out of power. Well, as it appears, our antimatter reactors do not work. Why is that? Is unknown to me. Completely unknown at this point. So I decided, well, at very least we can move our laboratory to Jool and we will have a tiny nuclear reactor with a laboratory in the Julian orbit, so it will help us. And maybe, just maybe, the reason why we can't launch our antimatter reactors is because we have only very small amounts of antimatter. So in Julian orbit it should be possible to collect antimatter, so maybe they will start there. And here we are leaving sphere of influence of Kerbin. Because we don't have a continuous power supply, we have to do this in couple of burns. So we were burning at periapsis around the Kerbin, and when we achieved the escape velocity, we actually lost all the power, so we have to correct our orbit around the Sun. And now we're using our laboratory to reprocess the nuclear fuel to prolong the life of our nuclear reactor. And while doing that, I completely missed the maneuver node. Oh well. So I'll have to do another maneuver node in the next orbit. Of course it is very inefficient and we're wasting lots of fuel, but we actually have a lot more than we need, so we can waste some of it. So let's time warp to it and start the burn. Again, we won't be able to do it in one burn. We'll have to do the burn, then wait until our megajoules are restored by our fission reactor, and then continue the burn and until we're done. Kinda like that. So here we are, and I hear that there is a big problem with audio synchronization again and again. I'm not sure why it happens sometimes and then doesn't happen at other times. So here we are, tweaking our approach to Jool, making sure that we're getting nice gravity assist and that our trajectory and our velocity is falling down simply because we are going into the gravity well and not because we are wasting fuel. So let's time warp into the sphere of influence of Jool and see if we can circularize around it and start using its magnetic field for gathering of antimatter. This time warp will take a couple of minutes. Of course, first we would need to execute our maneuver node, just like that. It is actually quite a good encounter, because we're getting very nice and smooth gravity assist of Jool, instead of just shooting into interplanetary space because we gathered a lot of velocity. We are going into the nice orbit if we leave the sphere of influence of Jool, but we're not going to do that. We are going to circularize. And while we are waiting, I wanted to say something. And that is big thank you to everybody who is watching my videos and who subscribe to my channel. At the moment, there are 48 of you who think that my videos are worth watching and worth subscribing to. Thank you very much for this, because without you, I won't be able to be here and do these videos. So let's see how we're going to circularize. First I was thinking, okay, maybe I can get a gravity assist of Tylo or something, but then I decided, nah, it's not worth it. We're just going to go for direct circularization around Jool, and then we're going to lower our periapsis, apoapsis, and raise our periapsis to make sure that we are in kind of circular orbit. And the height of this orbit will be determined by the amount of antimatter we can gather, because it is different and really depends on the magnetic field of the planet, which differs with the height. So let's start circularization, and we can drop our apoapsis almost to the orbit of Val. Well, actually we're at the orbit of Tylo, right? Yes, Tylo. So now we're dropping it even further. We're passing Val. And just a little bit more. We're getting encounter with Leif. And we are lower than Leif. So now we're going to see over which distance we are going to circularize. For that we're going to select the antimatter collector, and we'll see how much antimatter we are gathering, and then at highest point we are going to circularize. So let's see, we're getting 520, 550, around 11,000 kilometers. So this is going to be our final altitude. So let's warp to apoapsis and start raising our periapsis to approximately 11,000. Or at the moment we are going to do it for as high as we can. And then later we are going to drop our apoapsis, raise periapsis, and so on and so forth. On the way we get a random encounter with Leif, which actually raises our periapsis a little bit, which is good. So we can easily continue and do all the things we need. And most observant of you already noticed that although our antimatter collectors tell us that we are getting a lot of antimatter, our antimatter resource is actually not rising up. So at this point I'm thinking that there is a bug in the game at the moment, where antimatter is not collected when we are doing it through different docking ports, or when the reactors are added after the fact. So I went into the config file and changed it a little bit, so now we can actually transfer antimatter across the whole ship, just like the monopropellant, for example. So we can actually produce power in Julian orbit right now. And I was thinking, okay, let's see our Moho lab. Wait, where is it? It is gone for no apparent reason. So what can we do now? Well, we have ways to produce antimatter and to convert it into the energy. We still have our EVE lab in orbit around EVE, of course, and we can try moving it back home because we have the means to do it. And suddenly all antimatter that was in the EVE laboratory is gone. Apparently it was wasted in the production of more antimatter because our nuclear reactor ran out of power. Not the best thing. So what shall we do about that? It is that point where I realized that our nuclear reactor is not producing anything. So I decided, well, we need to take a Kerbal on EVA and do the maintenance, restart our reactor, and use the laboratory to reprocess all the processed fuel so that we have a little bit more room. Alright, we've done that. Now let's deactivate all the antimatter reactors and start producing antimatter anew. And as you can see, we produced a little bit, but it doesn't go further. For some reason, the antimatter reactors just love to turn on their own. I tell that a lot these days. I don't know why it happens. They just seem to turn on for no reason whatsoever and consume all the antimatter they just produced. But at some point I actually managed to make sure that they are not turning on their own, and now we're producing antimatter and waiting for the window to carbon. Everything seems to be smooth, right? And because I said it, you already know that things will go wrong, right? So let's see. Antimatter is producing, reactors are turned off, everything is good and fine. Our time is ticking down slowly, so everything should be good, right? Well, we are going to find out in a moment. So I'm turning my ship in the direction of lander, trying to switch to it, and nothing happens. Orbit of our laboratory disappears, its resources disappear, all kind of control over the interface of the game disappears. I can still use the reactors, use the engine, and so on and so forth. But I can't, for example, check the amount of fuel or the orbit or anything else, except with the Kerbal Engineer, but not with the stock UI. And I am confused. So I think, well, go to Space Center. And the button doesn't work. And something tells me that at this point I completely bugged this spaceship. It just died. So we will assume that all the Kerbals that were there were annihilated in the antimatter reaction, which occurred because reasons. So, what we've done in this episode. We completed our power station in the orbit around Jool, and we can now produce power, and a lot of it, approximately 10 gigawatt, and transfer it around the Julian system and in the direction of Kerbin. What that means is that we will be able to launch our next vehicle, which will use this power and will get into the Jool orbit to deliver brave explorers there, which will then land on each and every moon of Jool, gather all the valuable science, and return it home to Kerbin. But that will happen over the course of next couple of episodes. For now, thank you all for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Remember to like, dislike, and comment this video in the section below. My name is Darlock, and I will see you all next time. Goodbye.